My name is Elizabeth, but most people call me Liz for short. I'm a 36-year-old registered dietitian working at an elementary school in my neighborhood. My husband, Jake, who's also 36, works for a food manufacturing company. He works in the research and development department for his company, which require really demanding hours. He's always busy developing new products and rarely has a quiet moment. Despite his crazy work schedule, he's a loving and doting father to our little girl, Lily. As a family of 3, our greatest joy comes from food, whether cooking it, growing it, or sharing meals together. I've always made it a priority to create meals that turn our dinner table into a fun and heartwarming place. On his rare days off, Jake loves to play chef. He carefully blends spices to make his signature curry from scratch, or fire up his smoker to prepare mouth-watering smoked meats and fish. Lily, on the other hand, loves tending to her small balcony garden. She gets so excited when she harvests her carefully grown cherry tomatoes, strawberries, or whatever's in season. We live in a suburban apartment that's a bit far from the bus stops and train stations. But the trade-off is a spacious balcony where we can enjoy our hobbies. I genuinely feel lucky to live here. In other words, we're just your typical average American family. When I was a child, I was a terribly picky eater. I wouldn't touch anything except plain white toast and milk. My poor mom didn't know what to do with me. That all changed in elementary school when I discovered the joy of food through our school lunches. Our school had an unusual lunch program for the time. It was buffet style. Watching my friends pick their food with excitement inspired me to try things I'd never eaten before. Slowly, I began to eat foods I once thought I hated. This is so delicious. Sharing those words with my friends made every meal taste even better. Starting in middle school, I had to bring my own lunch. Since my mom worked full-time, I took on the responsibility of making my own lunch boxes. At first, I'd burn the eggs or sausages, but as I improved, I felt so proud of myself. Cooking became something I truly enjoyed. Those early experiences are what inspired me to become a dietitian. My husband, Jake, has his own complicated relationship with food that shaped his life. When I met him in college through the tennis club, he was shockingly thin. His friends jokingly called him Bones because of how scrawny he was. I don't really care about food. He rarely joined group dinners or parties, and his idea of eating during practice was grabbing a protein shake or a meal replacement bar. But all of that changed at a club potluck party one day. The party was meant to honor our graduating seniors, but the organizer forgot to book the restaurant. Since this happened the day before, we had no choice but to organize a potluck, with plans to hold a formal farewell later. Everyone brought something to share. I decided to prepare sandwiches and lasagna, something simple and easy for a crowd. The party was going well. As I enjoyed the other food people brought, I noticed Jake sitting in the corner, drinking beer and ignoring the food. "Hey, try this. It's really good." His friend handed him a plate of my lasagna. At first, Jake refused, but after being told it was rude not to eat something someone made, he reluctantly took a bite. "Wow, I didn't know homemade lasagna could taste this good." His eyes lit up with surprise, and in no time, he had devoured the entire plate. He quickly reached for a second serving and even started sampling other dishes at the table. Once things settled down, he came over to me. "You're really amazing. I can't believe you made that lasagna on your own." "It's nothing special. Just put all the ingredients in a casserole dish and stick it in the oven. I'm sure that most people could make a simple lasagna." "No way. This is a talent, Liz. This is the best lasagna that I've ever tasted." I didn't think my lasagna was anything special, but his reaction had a reason behind it. His mother, Gwen. Gwen was what you'd call a terrible cook, someone who managed to ruin even the simplest meals. According to Jake, her baked dishes were always burnt to a crisp, and her stews were boiled so long that the ingredients turned to mush. One time, she served something called cream stew. Instead, it was a neon pink gelatinous blob that tasted sour. For Jake, this wasn't a rare occurrence. It happened almost every day ever since he was a little boy. To make things worse, Gwen refused to let Jake eat anything other than her cooking. Even though his schools provided lunch, she insisted on sending him with her homemade meals every single day, from kindergarten through middle school. The school staff tried to reason with her, explaining that allergy-safe meals were available and that Jake didn't need a packed lunch. But Gwen wouldn't listen. Whenever they brought it up, she would storm into the school and yell at the teachers. Eventually, she even refused to pay the school lunch fees, stubbornly insisting that Jake eat only the food she prepared. On top of that, Gwen held extremely outdated beliefs. When Jake entered middle school and tried to make his own lunch as a form of rebellion, she flatly refused to let him use the kitchen. "Cooking is a woman's job, so the kitchen is no place for you to be. As my son, it's your duty to eat the meals I make for you." But Jake didn't give up. He started waking up earlier than Gwen to prepare his own lunch. When she found out, she threw his homemade lunch straight into the trash. This became a deep, painful memory for him. He told me how it made him lose all interest in food. Even when he moved out for college and started living alone, his childhood trauma stayed with him. He stuck to cheap, minimal nutrition meal replacement foods that he could buy in bulk. "I want to change that now. I want to learn how to make good food, and I want to move past this. Liz, will you help me and teach me to cook?" When Jake begged me to help him learn, I agreed as long as he paid for the groceries. I started going to his apartment, and he'd come to mine. Week by week, I taught him how to cook simple meals: grilled chicken, pasta with homemade sauce, stir-fried vegetables. Those lessons became something more, and soon, we found ourselves falling in love. "We'll start with something simple today, okay? No pressure. You're doing great." "Thanks, Liz. I've never done this before, but I really want to get this right." At first, he was so awkward in the kitchen, he didn't even know how to hold a knife properly. But as the weeks passed, I watched him improve, gaining confidence and skill. I was so proud of the progress he was making in such a short time. "Look at this pasta. It looks amazing. Taste it. You'll see how far you've come." "Wow, it's really good. I can't believe I made this. I've never been this proud of something I cooked before." Through cooking, I could see Jake's trauma start to heal. Every time he smiled and said, "This is delicious," it warmed my heart. Our relationship grew stronger over time. After we graduated, Jake landed a job in product development at a major food company, while I started working as a dietitian at an elementary school. A few years later, once we both felt financially stable, we decided to get married. "Let's get married, Liz. All this time we've spent together, cooking, laughing, building a life, has made me happier than I ever thought possible." "Of course. And let's keep making good food together for the rest of our lives." The smile on his face that day is something I'll never forget. But there was one worry that still lingered in my mind: his mother, Gwen. From everything Jake had told me, I had a feeling she would be a force to be reckoned with, and I was right. When we visited for our wedding introduction, I was shocked by what I saw. Jake's father, Robert, was even thinner than Jake used to be. His gaunt figure and pale face made him look more like a skeleton or a zombie than a living person. In stark contrast, his mother was plump, with a rosy complexion that suggested perfect health. She didn't seem to oppose our marriage, but she was incredibly boastful. She went on and on about coming from a prestigious family, how she was loved as an only child, and what a perfect housewife she had been since marriage. "If Jake wants to spend the rest of his life with you, then I suppose the marriage is fine." Her approval came surprisingly easily, and I silently hoped the rest of our visit would pass without any trouble. But that was not to be. I had planned to leave before dinner, but Gwen insisted we stay to eat. "I'm sorry, but I already have plans after this." I politely declined, but she kept insisting, saying, "Stay and have dinner." I didn't want to offend her, so I reluctantly agreed. But when the food was served, I was speechless. What is this? It was beyond anything I could have imagined. The bowl of rice was yellow and mushy with a sharp, sour smell that hit me the moment it was placed in front of me. The onion soup had a massive lump of seasoning just sitting at the bottom, while the few pieces of green onion floating on the top had turned a sickly brown color. A small side dish of spinach had, of all things, strawberry jam drizzled over the top. And the main dish, a piece of baked fish, was smothered in a thick layer of peanut butter. "Go ahead and eat as much as you like. There's plenty more where that came from." With a proud expression, she urged me to eat. Summoning every bit of courage, I took a bite of the rice, but my instinct screamed at me. If I kept eating, I was sure to get sick. I set my fork down after that one bite. I'm so sorry, but I really do have plans that I can't miss. I practically fled their house, desperate to escape. When I got home, the small amount I had eaten made me feel so ill that I was bedridden for 2 days. I'm so sorry. I didn't think it would be that bad. You shouldn't have forced yourself to eat. It's not your fault. I just didn't have the courage to say no. I tried to comfort him, but Jake's expression turned serious. My mom's always been like that. Once we're married, you don't have to deal with her much. If anything happens again, I promise I'll protect you. I decided to trust his words. But our married life quickly turned into a nightmare. Gwen felt insulted that I didn't eat her cooking that day and seemed to take it as a personal attack. From then on, she made my life miserable, especially when it came to food. We had rented an apartment halfway between both of our workplaces, but Gwen began showing up almost every day. She went as far as to wait outside our door and would force her way in. And the first thing she would do was to inspect my groceries. Instant noodles and canned soup? How could you eat such toxic garbage? There must be something wrong with your taste buds. She would also comment on the bottled water Jake liked to drink. Buying water? That's so wasteful. Water is water. It all tastes the same. Her criticisms extended to fresh produce as well. Look at these cabbage leaves. They're slightly yellow. You're really buying this rotting garbage? Are you blind? If she saw imported meat or fish in my fridge, she would rant about it. You have no idea how this was raised. How could you eat something so disgusting? Finally, she would pull out my receipts and start scolding me. You spend this much on just groceries? You're hopeless at managing a household budget. Eventually, Jake couldn't stand it anymore and snapped. Mom, that's enough. Stop interfering with our life. You need to leave now and focus on your own home. Jake had never raised his voice to her before, so his anger shocked her. She left quickly after that. But that peace was short-lived. Not long after, we received wonderful news. I was pregnant with a baby girl. Our beautiful baby was born during the spring when the cherry blossoms bloom, so we named her Lily, hoping she'd blossom beautifully in her own life. Of course, we couldn't completely ignore Jake's parents now that they had a granddaughter. Slowly, we began rebuilding our relationship with them. Lily was their first grandchild, and they absolutely doted on her. They showered her with gifts, sent cards and congratulations for every milestone, and even showed up for her birthdays. I thought Lily was truly blessed. I really hoped those peaceful days would continue forever, but a turning point came when Lily started preschool. The trigger was the renovation of my in-laws' home. Their house was over a decade old, and its worn-out condition was starting to become a problem. Since Jake's parents were getting older, they decided to renovate it to be more manageable for an aging couple. However, because it was such a large-scale renovation, Jake's parents needed a temporary place to live. The construction company arranged a small functional apartment, but Gwen immediately rejected it. It's tiny, and the amenities look cheap. I refuse to stay there. Robert tried to find other options, but nothing met Gwen's unreasonable standards. As the move-out deadline approached, they ran out of time. In the end, Gwen turned to us. Let us stay with you for a while. Honestly, the thought of living with her under the same roof made my stomach churn. Well, if it's only temporary, I suppose it's okay. We agreed on the condition that they'd split the cost for rent, utilities, and groceries. And so, our cohabitation arrangement was made. But living together turned out to be far worse than I could have imagined. Gwen ignored the chore schedule we had agreed upon. Instead, she only focused on the things she wanted to do, like taking care of Lily. She also ignored our building's trash rules and parking lot agreements, which caused constant issues with the other residents. On top of that, her idea of helping Lily was simply spoiling her, which made things even harder for me. For example, if Lily refused to eat her vegetables at dinner. Oh dear, what a mean mommy, trying to make you eat things you don't like. Here, Grandma will get rid of it for you. She would grab Lily's plate and dump the food straight into the trash. "Please stop doing that. What kind of mother makes food that her child can't eat? You're doing a lousy job as a mother." Her words cut deep, and her actions only reinforced bad habits for Lily. To make things worse, she would give Lily things like chocolate and raw fish, things I wasn't ready to let her eat yet. It was hypocritical. She constantly criticized store-bought food for being full of chemicals, yet happily gave Lily packaged snacks just to please her. To make matters worse, Gwen threw away the meals I had prepped in the fridge, as well as the meat and fish I had carefully marinated. "This is such a waste. Please stop throwing away perfectly good food. These dishes are tasteless garbage. And you call yourself a dietitian. What are you even making?" She ignored my pleas and completely proceeded to ruin the rest of my cooking by pouring in absurd amounts of soy sauce, salt, and sugar. The only saving grace was that our apartment had an IH stove, and since she couldn't figure out how to use it, she wasn't able to cook anything herself. But her harassment escalated even further until she began tampering with my personal belongings. One day, she tossed out my carefully tended pickling bed, calling it mud. Then, she threw away the knife set and electric pressure cooker Jake had gifted me for my birthdays over the years. "Why are you doing this?" My voice trembled. Having those gifts from my husband discarded felt like a piece of our bond had been destroyed. Even the personalized glasses our friends had given us as a wedding gift, and the tableware Jake and I had picked out together were labeled junk and thrown away. Then, she crossed an unforgivable line. She went into my closet. Claiming it was to remove odors, she poured dissolved instant coffee all over my clothes. And she had the nerve to do this while I was at work. By the time I got home and discovered it, it was too late. All of my clothes were ruined. Among them was the dress my mother had lovingly prepared for my Sweet 16 ceremony. No, this was something my mother had gifted me. It was precious. I sobbed as I told Jake what had happened. "I can't take this anymore. Your mother has ruined everything of mine." When Jake saw the disaster in my closet, he finally snapped. "Mom, enough is enough." He confronted her, his face hard with anger. "If you keep behaving like this, you need to leave this house immediately." But Gwen acted as though nothing had happened. "What are you talking about? I haven't done anything wrong." The atmosphere in our home turned unbearable. Finally, Robert spoke up, his voice heavy with guilt. "I'm so sorry. This is all my fault." He blamed himself for never standing up to his wife and apologized to me deeply. Afterward, the stress pushed me to my breaking point. I started feeling unwell more and more often. Seeing this, Jake made a suggestion. "Why don't you take a break from time to time? Here, I found this brochure for a local community class." He handed me the pamphlet with a kind smile. I thought that maybe getting some fresh air and time to myself would help, so I agreed. I chose a pottery class that took place once a week. I dreamed of making beautiful dishes for my family to use one day, so I started attending classes with that goal in mind. That's where I met Linda, the instructor. Linda was cheerful and kind, and she quickly earned the trust and affection of everyone in the class. "All right, let's enjoy ourselves today. Creating something with your hands is nourishment for the soul." Her words soothed me, and I began to feel like a weight was slowly lifting from my shoulders. After about 7 months, the renovation of my in-laws' house was finally complete. As I helped them move back into their home, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. But Gwen was still not done with herself just yet. The house looked brand new. Every inch of it was polished and pristine, reflecting the large sum of money spent on the renovation. She had spared no expense, and every detail of the interior and exterior reflected her meticulous taste. "Since the house is finally finished, I'm going to throw a housewarming party." And of course, she demanded that I handle all the preparations for it. "You're a useless wife who can't even manage the basics of parenting or housework, so the least you can do is help out for once." "I'm sorry, but I'm not sure I can." Before I could finish, Gwen turned to Lily. "Lily, your mommy is going to make all the food for Grandma's big party. Isn't that exciting?" "Mommy, I want your egg rolls." With Lily's innocent request, I felt like I had no choice but to agree. Gwen decided on the guest list herself, leaving me responsible for the cooking, drinks, and even the cleaning. At first, I suggested ordering catering or sushi trays, but she wouldn't allow it. What a waste of money. You're going to make everything from scratch. I couldn't help but think how hypocritical she was, always criticizing my cooking. But Lily's request reminded me why I was doing this, and I decided to focus on the task. On the day of the party, I woke up early and prepared a variety of hors d'oeuvres, pasta, and sandwiches. I carefully arranged everything in the ceramic dishes I had made at my pottery class. Relatives and family members began arriving at Jake's parents' house. Meanwhile, Gwen paraded Lily around, showing her off to everyone. She didn't lift a single finger to help, even though she was the host of the party. With Jake and his father's help, I managed to get everything ready. But then, disaster struck. "Emily, come to the living room and serve our guests something to drink." She said this and left the room, claiming she needed to use the bathroom. When she didn't return after a while, I decided to check on her. I heard strange clattering sounds coming from the kitchen and walked over, my heart sinking with dread. "What are you doing?" There she was, throwing all of the food I had made into the trash. "What does it look like? I'm getting rid of this garbage." She stood there, pouring dish soap over the food to make sure it was completely ruined. "Stop. I worked so hard to make all of that. This isn't even fit for human consumption. Maybe you should take some cooking lessons." As a final blow, she picked up my handmade ceramic dishes and smashed them into the trash can, shattering them with a loud crash. Tears welled up in my eyes, but this time, anger overwhelmed me. "This is too much." Jake appeared just in time, his voice thundering with rage. "Mom, what the hell are you doing?" Gwen turned around, her expression calm and dismissive. "What do you mean? I'm throwing away that garbage. I can't possibly let our guests eat such slop. Emily worked so hard on this since early this morning." His voice shook as he took in the scene, the food drenched in soap, my handmade ceramics smashed in the trash. "I can't believe this. Mom, how could you do this?" "This is just too cruel. I can't take it anymore," I shouted, barely holding back my tears. Gwen scoffed and looked at me with disdain. "It's because your cooking is terrible. For a dietitian, you don't seem to have much skill." "That's enough, Mom. Get out of this house." Jake shouted, his voice carrying a level of anger I'd never heard before. "What are you talking about? This is my house, and I have every right to be here." At that moment, Robert stepped into the kitchen, his face somber and tired. "Stop this. What you've done is unforgivable." His low, calm voice echoed through the kitchen. For the first time, Gwen looked uneasy. "You've spent your life manipulating everyone around you with your selfishness. I stayed quiet for too long, but I've had enough." Gwen opened her mouth to argue, but he cut her off. "Throwing away Emily's food and destroying something she made with care? That's inexcusable even for you." "But I'm not wrong. If you let people eat that garbage—" "Enough. Leave this house." When Robert shouted, the kitchen fell into complete silence. Gwen stood frozen for a moment before tears filled her eyes and she shrieked, "All of you are abandoning me! How could you do that?" "You brought this on yourself, Mom." Jake spoke quietly, but his gaze was firm and unwavering. Just then, the doorbell rang. I blinked in surprise, but when I opened the door, I found Linda standing there. "Linda? Emily, are you okay? I came to help out with the party. Is something wrong?" Hearing Linda's kind voice, the tension that had been weighing me down suddenly began to lift. "Oh, I'm sorry, Linda. We've had a bit of a situation here." Linda glanced around the kitchen, quickly piecing together what had happened. "Mrs. Mitchell, what do you think you're doing? How could you ruin something Emily worked so hard to make?" "What? What does this have to do with you?" "It has everything to do with me. Emily is not only my student, but also my friend." At Linda's firm words, Gwen fell silent for a moment before trying to fire back. "This is my house, and I can do whatever I want. This has nothing to do with you." "It absolutely does. Wasting food is unacceptable, and throwing away something someone worked so hard to make, right in front of them, that's shameful behavior." Linda's voice was calm, but it carried a quiet anger that made the room feel even colder.
Linda, I'm so sorry. This all happened because I've been too weak to stop her.
At Robert's apology, Linda gave him a gentle nod. It's okay now. Emily has done more than enough.
Mom, you need to leave. If you keep hurting Emily like this, I'll never forgive you.
Jake's voice was filled with resolve. In contrast, his mother's voice trembled with both anger and desperation. You're throwing me out? This house has all my hard work and vision in it.
That's enough. I paid for this entire renovation out of my own pocket. I'm done putting up with your selfishness.
Robert's voice was quiet, but carried the weight of years of frustration. You're going to betray me as well? Why is everyone treating me like the bad guy? Pretending to be the victim won't work anymore. Maybe it's time you take a hard look at your actions. At Linda's words, Gwen fell silent, her face turning bright red with shame. After a long silence, Robert exhaled deeply.
I've made up my mind. We're getting a divorce.
At those words, Gwen's eyes widened in shock. What are you saying? You're joking, right?
I'm not joking. After everything you've done, I can't live with you anymore.
Dad? Jake looked shocked, but couldn't say a word when he saw the determination in his father's face.
This house is in my name, and I paid for the renovations. Once we're divorced, you'll have to leave.
What? And where am I supposed to go? I'll take you in. I can provide you with a place to stay and work. At Linda's sudden offer, Gwen's eyes widened again. Work? Me? Yes, I need someone to help around my house. I'm sure I can find something for you to do. Linda's words dripped with irony, but Gwen had no room to argue.
If you're not happy with this offer, you'll have to figure things out on your own.
Gwen's shoulders shook, and she fell silent, tears brimming in her eyes. After that, Jake's parents officially divorced, and his mother began working under Linda's supervision. I couldn't thank Linda enough. With Jake and his father, I finally reclaimed a peaceful life. Robert found a new hobby, gardening. He and Lily spent their days planting vegetables and flowers together in the yard.
I never thought I'd get to enjoy such a peaceful retirement.
The smile on his face was genuine, full of contentment. From now on, I want to treasure this peaceful life more than anything.